What is up, Red fans? It is PsychedelicScizor, and I am here to bring you the post-draft power rankings of Season 7 of the Regional Elite Draft League for the Blue Division. Now, make sure to check out everything else this channel is doing. We should have Redcast, and this, I believe, is the only consistent stuff going up, although stuff may be added later, we don't know. But, yeah, make sure to subscribe if you are new to this, and hopefully we'll have a good time here, because my opinions are clearly perfect here and have no flaws in them whatsoever. But seriously, leave your comments down below. This will be a good discussion, but this is at least what I thought. So, teams should be popping up on the screen as I'm going over them, but I will list them off anyway because, in all honesty, at the time of recording this, I don't know how editing is going to go, but we're figure it out. Obviously, you'll be seeing it. So, without further ado, let's get on into the teams. So, for number 14, we have got the Nimrod Ninetails, coached by Zach T. His team is Greninja, Kyurem, Espeon, Nidoking, Klefki, Alolan Raichu, Mega Sharpedo, Talonflame, Hitmontop, Esselgor, and Go-Goat, with his Z users being Alolan Raichu and Greninja. Now, Zach. Round 1 Greninja. What are you doing? Really, just, that is really one thing that bothers me about this team, because you went with round 1 Greninja, which is a great mod, don't get me wrong, but it is absolutely not first round, really not even second round pick. It's a good third round pick, honestly. Maybe end of second. No, it's not end of second round, it is third round pick that you picked up first round. And, because of that, you kind of... This leads into my first problem being your team doesn't have any giant centralizing threat in terms of you don't have a Celesteela or a Lando T or a Mega Gallade or something like that that just has to be addressed by every team in Team Prep and the team is centralized around. You've kind of just got a bunch of decent mons thrown together on a team and nothing really centralizing or like broken to lean on. In addition to that, the hazard game on this team is horrible. Nidoking is the only stealth rocker, and that really is an issue for this team because this team needs Nidoking to be a breaker because it doesn't have other legitimate breakers on it besides maybe Kyurem, which is not the most consistent bring in the world since half of its stabs rely on, well, you don't have to hit Blizzard, you have to hit Ice Beam. Ignore that point, but still, Kyurem being weak to rocks is not great. And there's some decent mons on this team, just I don't feel any synergy with them, and just this over-reliance on Nidoking being a stealth rocker, which it's not good if you lean on it as a stealth rocker. Having the option is great, but it's the only one. You've only then got spikes on Klefki and Esselgor, and with Klefki, you're going to be wanting to run Defog because you need Defog for Talonflame, and your only other hazard removal is Rapid Spin on Hitmontop, which just... it's not that great of a mon. It's really not. And last thing, why is Talonflame not your second Z user? You have the extra points instead of Alolan Raichu. I don't see why you didn't go with Talonflame as your Z user. It really just needs Z moves to be an effective mon, honestly. But just because I felt such a lack of synergy, such a bad hazard game, and just kind of the haphazardness of this team, I have to rank it at 14. Obviously, if you play well, you get moved up, and you could prove me wrong if you win the whole thing, but just based on your team, I have to put you at 14. So, at number 13, we have got the Adelaide Hodge Crows, coached by Bill Standish, founder of the league himself. And his team is Zygarde 50%, Mega Kangaskhan, Tapu Bulu, Bastiodon, Hitmonlee, Necrozma, Tentacruel, Articuno, Raichu, and Mismagius, with his Z users being Necrozma, Bastiodon, and Articuno. Now, this team, let's start off with the positives here. Zygarde 50 and Mega Kangaskhan are going to absolutely shred through pure fat teams. Those mons love those teams. They're going to destroy them. Necrozma does well against them too, so does Bulu. That's kind of all this team does, though. So looking at my notes here, if I can find which one I'm looking at. So it does have a speed issue. It only has 2 mons above base 100 speed, being Raichu and Mismagius, neither of which being particularly great. So he's going to rely on choice scarfing mons a lot, like Scarf Hitmonlee or Scarf Bulu is going to come a lot, which really limits Bulu, because Bulu also wants to play a defensive role on this team. And just, yeah, I will say the breakers on this team are great. Physical walls are going to have such a hard time versus this team. But this team also has a pretty stacked weakness to ice as well as ground. His only switch in 2 ice moves, really, his only practical one, I should say, is the Tentacruel. Bastiodon can, but I really dislike how much this team kind of leans on Bastiodon, typing-wise, because Bastiodon is not a good mon, and it is a horrendous momentum drain. And the rock situation is also bad, because his only rockers are Necrozma and Bastiodon, and I think he's basically going to be playing a whole season without Z-moves, hardly, because Bastiodon and Articuno are not coming very much, and not running Z-moves if they come. Articuno maybe, but Bastiodon definitely not. And Necrozma is going to have a hard time running Z-moves, because it's going to need to be the team's Stealth Rocker. Or if it is, it's not like a setup threat, it's just going to be like Z-move, Stealth Rock. So I just feel like between this team's really, really heavy leaning on Tentacruel, which, might I add, Tentacruel is this team's answer to Ice, Water, Fighting, Fairy. Well, okay, Fighting is handled by Necrozma and kind of by Bulu, but just basically any fighting type that has some kind of coverage to hit Tentacruel or Necrozma is just gonna destroy this team. It's just so slow, and Tentacruel just, it doesn't have reliable recovery. It's going to also need to be the hazard remover for the team. Just, this team is going to struggle versus fast teams a lot. It's going to need to run Scarfers, it's going to need to lean on Raichu and Mismagius, which just aren't strong without setup. And there's a lot of good mons on this team, but the issue I have is not the mons, but the roles they're forced to be into, because just because of the way this team is constructed. I feel like Necrozma especially is the most hindered, because it's a great Z user, but in this case, I really don't like how shoehorned it is into a defensive Stealth Rocker role, because the team just doesn't have them outside of that. Yeah, that is the Adelaide Honchcrows. Obviously, I know Bill is a talented player, and he could definitely shoot his way up the power rankings, but he's going to have to start from near the bottom, just because he gave himself a weird team. He's going to excel versus very slow, bulky teams, but anything with a decent speed advantage on him, which is not hard to get at all, is going to give him a really hard time. And so, we're going to move on now to number 12, which is going to be, if I can read my notes, it is going to be the Toronto Tyrannitars, coached by Blitz, and his team consists of Celesteela, Manaphy, Sylveon, Weavile, Incineroar, Licky, Gourgeist, Rotom, Spook, and Megaladios, with the Z users being Manaphy and Rotom. Now, you gotta ask me, why in the hell is the team that got Celesteela and Megaladios this low down? And that's what I initially thought too. I thought that Celesteela Megaladios would be absolutely amazing, and it would be near the top of the power rankings. And then I looked at the rest of his team, and realized that those two are amazing, but he has very, very poor support for them. So where do we start? Okay, so first off, if you have a Celesteela, you need good electric-type responses, and he kind of didn't draft them. He does not have an electric immunity at all, so Specs electric types are going to come every week, and his only switch-ins to it are Rotom, which is not that bulky, Gourgeist, which is not that bulky on the special side, and Megaladios, which is a good answer to electric types, but that means Megaladios is being forced into a defensive role, which the whole thing that makes this mon amazing is how offensively versatile it is while still being bulky. It's gonna really limit that Megaladios. Next, Celesteela is also probably going to have to be defensive a lot, because that's his only fairy answer he can even remotely take on stuff like that. I mean, Celesteela is leaned on very hard for this team defensively. This team has no hazards at all. None. No spikes, no rocks, nothing. Yet he drafted so many mons that lean on hazards. Celesteela needs hazard support to sweep. Megaladios appreciates hazard support to sweep. Weavile needs hazard support. Manaphy likes hazard support. This whole team wants hazards, and there's none to speak of here at all. And while, in the next point, while Megaladios and Celesteela are threatening, the second he has to go into defensive mons, his defensive core is so passive, with Gourgeist, Licky being his really fat mons. And while on paper that seems like a pretty fat, hard to break core, and I guess it is, they're not doing hardly any damage to you back. Just Toxic is just free versus this team, except for Celesteela. But if you have a decent way of handling Celesteela, you're not threatened by this team hardly at all. And this team doesn't really have physical breakers either. Weavile, I guess, could count as that, but that's more of a cleaner, sweeper kind of thing. It's not the best at breaking, especially because this team only has Defog Latios and Defog Rotom as hazard removal, and Rotom is just not that amazing of a mon, and Megaladios does not want to be forced into Defog. And so Weavile is very limited here. Incineroar, I feel like, is overlapping with Weavile. They do pretty much the same thing. I mean, it's nice to have a Pursuit Trapper with Weavile. I think Weavile plus Megaladios is an amazing core as well, but again, there's just no support for it, and there's just no momentum, which plays into the whole team being so passive. There's no way to get into those threatening mons other than having to predict and get into stuff. Now, this team is not last because despite these horrible limitations this team has, it is still going to be carried by the fact that regardless of how much support it has, Celesteela, Latios, and then to a lesser extent Latios, Weavile, they're so good that is going to carry this team, but I just don't... this team is going to struggle. It just doesn't support what it's trying to go for well at all. Prove me wrong. I mean, most of the mons on this team are very good in their own right. They just don't seem to have any synergy together, hardly, besides the mentioned cores that I said. And I'd love to be proven wrong, but I need you to show me that, because this team just doesn't look set for success. So that's what I have to say about Blitz. Moving on, number 11. We have got the Ladner Lantern, I think I pronounced that right, by Electricity, and his team is Mega Alakazam, Buzzwole, Donphan, Bisharp, Alomomola, Comfey, Miltank, Dragalge, Vikavolt, Tangela, and Salazzle, the Z users being Bisharp, Vikavolt, and Tangela. Now, Electricity. This team, first thing that struck me about this team is really fat. Donphan, Buzzwole, Alomomola, Miltank. Well, the primary defensive core of, like, Donphan, Alomomola, Miltank is very hard to break. Throw in Buzzwole and Dragalge and Tangela to that mix, it's super fat. Comfey can also be defensive. Vikavolt can even play certain niche defensive roles. And that is a really, really fat team. In fact, the only note that I wrote on there was just thick. That's just all I wrote on there. But that is going to be this team's kind of bread and butter, just being hard to break. Alomomola, passing wishes to things that really want it, like the Dragalge, like the Donphan. It's a really solid typing-wise and bulk-wise core. I really do enjoy that. but there's definitely issues, as you see by him being this low. So, first one, speed is really weird on this team. You've got ridiculously fast Mega Alakazam going down to pretty fast Salazzle at base 117. Then the next fastest Mon is Miltank, which isn't really going to be running speed. But realistically, to the next Mon that is actually going to run speed, you go from base 117 Salazzle all the way down to base 79 Buzzwole. Now that speed gap is going to mean everything from base 116 speed up until base like 95 speed or 96, something along those lines. All of those are going to be able to run Modest or Adamant, which is going to hurt the defensive core that he built, because yeah, they're fat, but they're also going to be facing stronger Mons because they don't have to worry about as much speed creep. And continuing off of that, there is more good qualities to this team, though. I actually have more good things to say going forward. The Hazard game is very good. He has got some good rockers. Donphan is an extremely reliable rocker, as is Miltank. Bisharp can also set up rocks in the right matchup. And then he's got T-Spike support with Dragalge, which is really nice. And because of the T-Spikes, he does have the rapid spin with Donphan, so he doesn't have to defog those away. And, you know, that does help support Salazzle pretty well. And Comfy also with defog is not a bad defogger, not amazing, but it's definitely not bad. So the Hazard game is very good here, the bulk is very good here, but the speed tiers, very weird. The Z users, I also don't agree with. Bisharp, I could see as a Z user. I don't know for sure if I would have gone with that. I maybe would have gone with Buzzwole, but I don't think that's straight up a bad choice. I just think it's a personal taste choice. The one that I do not agree with, though, is with the last 9 points, he just go with Vikavolt and Tangela instead of going with Dragalge, and I really don't like that. I think Dragalge is a good Z user because who wants to switch into an adaptability boosted stab devastating Drake from Draco Meteor? I think that's just a really lost opportunity, especially on this team that is going to somewhat struggle on offense a little bit, because it doesn't have a lot of offensive Mons. Most of those are special. It's going to be leaning on Bisharp and Buzzwole to do most of the heavy lifting physically. So it's odd. And finally, while it does have some good offensive members, it doesn't have any momentum to get into them. In fact, I think the only momentum it has is the Volt switch on Vikavolt, which Vikavolt isn't going to come a lot. It may come more on this team, but it's still not going to come a lot, or at least it's not going to come because it's a good matchup. That's just really annoying, because Mons like Mega Alakazam and Salazzle are so frail, they kind of need that slow Volt Switch or U-turn to get in on certain Mons, and they're going to have trouble getting in to do anything in the first place. But overall, this team definitely has good things going for it. This team definitely can win a lot of games if it's played with right, and you play to the defensive side of it while still putting on enough offensive pressure, so your opposing teams just aren't all stall breakers. But I don't mind this team. It's close to being good, but there's just a couple things that really set it off for me. Mostly that speed issue is ridiculous. So that is the Ladner Lantern. We are then going to move on to number 10, which is the Detroit Terravolts, coached by Nacho. And before I get into that, I need to drink some water. I'm already getting my mouth dry. Okay, so the Detroit Terravolts, coached by Nacho. Team is Tapu Koko, Hawlucha, Victini, Blastoise, Dhelmise, Mega Aggron, Zygarde 10%, Alolan Muck, Illumise, Furfrou. And actually that's it, just Furfrou, with his Z users being Tapu Koko and Illumise. So Nacho has... This is where we start to get into some good teams. These are good teams, but they are flawed in some way that definitely keep them down lower. Koko Lucha is great, and the speed is actually really really good. Tapu Koko, Hawlucha, and Zygarde 10% are all really nice fast threats. Victini is not too slow either, and it gets slow from there, but I think that's mostly fine. And that's the biggest things going for him. Koko Lucha being extremely good. Tapu Koko is amazing. I'd still say probably best mon in the format. And I do like Z Illumise. It's got just a couple of really niche options. I actually like Volbeat and Illumise in general. Volbeat's a little better because it can Tail Glow Pass, but other than that, they're literally the same. They have Prankster Defog and stuff like that. But let's go into this. This team has a very poor hazard game, as its only Stealth Rocker is Mega Aggron. While Mega Aggron is an extremely reliable Stealth Rocker, I think will come a lot. That's an issue though, because it has suddenly taken so many sets away from Mega Aggron. You can't run offensive sets as much anymore, or at least like curse sets. You can't do like Rest Talk Curse Heavy Slam, something like that. But it just limits Aggron quite a bit, and it forces it to come, which definitely can be taken advantage of. And while his team does have good bulk, I'd say Blastoise, Delmise, and Alolan Muck, and no, I'm not going to acknowledge Furfro's good defensive mon, it's there. Those are decent defensive mons in their own, and including Mega Aggron, none of them have recovery outside of Delmise, but Delmise definitely is a mon that I don't particularly like because it wants to do too many things at once. It wants to attack while it's in, it wants to rapid spin, it also has to recover sometimes, and just generally, this wall core is just gonna be problematic. It's gonna get worn down really easily, so he definitely has to hope he can keep up the offensive pressure with Tapu Koko and Zygarde, and for Hawlucha to win fairly quickly, because this team is not going to win a long game, especially as Mega Aggron really wants Wish support, but it really can't get it. Also, there is, if I can read my notes, yeah, the lack of recovery is an issue. There is a big speed gap, because once you hit Victini, it goes all the way down to, well, I think Furfro is technically like 90 or 95, something like that, but Furfro's not running speed. All the way down to really slow, like, what, Muck, Blastoise, whichever one's faster there. It's, mons like a Nidoking would match up really well versus this team if it's able to get in on defensive mons, because it can run Modest, and there's generally not a, well, actually, no, I read the wrong note there. I was about to say, I was wondering why I was thinking there was no momentum. This team does have good momentum. Tapu Koko is a great momentum gainer, so is Victini, so I definitely read the wrong note there. But overall, this team is good. It's just, it lacks the defensive backbone that this team potentially could have if it got a better bulky water. I try to mix those words together, and it just doesn't work. But it's not bad. I definitely think Furfro could be something else. I don't even mind Illumise. Like I said, it's got a lot of great utility options. I don't mind Illumise on the team. Just Furfro could be something else. Maybe it could have used those extra 2 points along with Blastoise to get a better bulky water. But that is what it is. The Detroit Terravolts definitely have good stuff going for them because Koko Lucha is amazing. But we're just going to have to see how he plays with that defensive core. Next, we have got the Golden State Wartortles, coached by Adam, and his team is Jirachi, Togekiss, Goodra, Mega Blastoise, Sarina, Nidoqueen, Blaziken, Zapdos, and Dusknoir, Z users being Zapdos and Dusknoir. Now, this team is, I definitely like parts of this team. Now, Adam has great hazard removal for his mons like Zapdos and Togekiss. Well, also those are his removals, Zapdos and Togekiss, as well as having two very reliable spinners in Mega Blastoise and Sarina, and even Defog Blaziken if he so chose to run that. He's got fantastic hazard removal, and his hazard game is okay. It's not amazing, it's okay. He's got rocks with Jirachi and Nidoqueen, which anti-spikes with Nidoqueen, which is a mixed bag. They're both good stealth rockers in their own right, and they don't mind running stealth rocks, but those are also 2 mons that can do a lot of other stuff besides that, and they're kind of being forced to, he has to bring one of them as a defensive stealth rocker each week, and that does put some limitation on them, but like I said, they are good rockers, so they don't necessarily mind it. You kind of just wish they maybe had one more defensive mon so that both of those could be freed up to do other things, but it's not the end of the world. And the momentum is very good with this team. It's got a ton of momentum. Jirachi U-turns, Togekiss baton passes, Sarina U-turns, Blaziken, I believe, U-turns, at least baton passes, and Zapdos Volt switches. So it definitely has very good momentum, and this team defensively is very, very solid. I think this is one of the best defensive teams in the league, one of the better defensive teams, because the Flinch Core is very good defensively together, and with the Wish Pass from Togekiss, that helps out mons like Mega Blastoise and Goodra that definitely want that, and Nidoqueen, as well as, but they're not dependent on Wish Pass, because you have walls like Sarina and Zapdos that are able to recover on their own. Those two make a pretty decent defensive core minus ice types, which are handled very well by Jirachi and Mega Blastoise. And that is somewhat where we run into the bad parts of this team. It is very slow. Its fastest mon is base 100 with Zapdos and Jirachi tying there. That is just not acceptable for the fastest mon in our team. They're going to have to run Choice Scarfers every week. Whether it be Jirachi or Togekiss or even Blaziken, Choice Scarfer is going to be mandatory, and it's almost going to be somewhat predictable because it's going to be one of those 3 mons most of the time. Maybe a Scarfito Queen, but it's just a slow team, and I understand it's defensive, but that's not good to limit yourself like that. And on top of that, I don't really like the Z-Mons on this team. I guess I understand Dusknoir only because it's the only other thing that he could afford. Dusknoir is not a good mon, I do not think at all, but to each their own. I've heard people who like it. I still definitely don't, but I don't understand why Zapdos is the Z user instead of Jirachi. Jirachi, I still think in a lot of cases there are better Z users than Jirachi, but on this team, it's pretty clear Jirachi is the best Z user on this team, which would actually give it some kind of setup offense, because at least Calm Mindsets would be much more threatening, and this team needs that. It doesn't have setup either, other than running like Agility Blaziken, or Nasty Plot Togekiss, or the subpar like Calm Mind Jirachi. That's really it. None of those are amazingly threatening, especially versus a team that is faster. I just don't get it. Z Zapdos, I don't know. I just don't really like it. Yeah, so this team, if it plays to its really defensive nature and maybe even embraces a Flinch Core, spreading around a bunch of T-Waves, this team could definitely flourish, but you're going to have to play to those strengths because that's really all this team has going for it. Although Choice Scarf Blaziken is good, but overall, this team does miss out on the top half because of its limitations being only able to be defensive for the most part. And so that is number 9. We are going to move on to number 8, which is going to be the New Britain Rockruffs, coached by Dielt Tite. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right too. His team is Mega Gallade, Tornadus Therian, Milotic, Galvantula, Fortress, Tangrowth, Slurpuff, Piloswine, and Moltres, with his Z users being Galvantula and Moltres. So this team, the Rockruffs, if I can, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with my notes. There it is. This team just barely misses out on the top half, and it was extremely close, but it has, just as you would expect from a team in the middle, great things going for it, but flaws that hold it back. It has got some great fast offense. Mega Gallade Tornadus T is a fantastic offensive core, as well as Moltres is an underrated offensive threat, and even Slurpuff in the right matchup can win because Mega Gallade does pressure those steel types pretty well. as well as a great defensive core. Milotic Tangrowth is kind of disgusting. Add Fortress to that mix, and even Piloswine, and it's a good defensive core. But I don't think those things synergize well together. Those offensive mons want momentum, and they're able to get it, but just going into Milotic or Tangrowth is such a momentum drain for this team. It doesn't really have slow pivots. It has offensive mons that can pivot out once they're in, but it's kind of hard to switch in other than Torn T, which does lead me to believe that Torn T is going to be run defensive more often than it would maybe like in order to be that pivot, and that's going to kind of limit the effectiveness of the offensive core. And webs are definitely nice, but there's not a ton that abuses webs necessarily. Like Mega Gallade and Torn T are already fast enough as is. There's not like a middle speed mon like a base 100 or base 90 that really appreciates webs. So I mean, it's there. It's not bad. And the hazard game is very meh on this team. It has got 2 Stealth Rockers, being the Fortress and the Piloswine, both of which are just very meh. Like, Fortress can definitely be taken advantage of, and Piloswine, it's not bad, but it does have a lot of weaknesses because of that ice typing, so that's kind of iffy to bring sometimes. It's not bad, and the hazard game isn't horrible, it's just meh. And the hazard removal is not fantastic either, seeing as Fortress is the only non-rock weak hazard removal that he has. Fortress doesn't always even want to be running Rapid Spin, honestly. When it's in, it wants to set up hazards or it wants to Volt Switch out of there. And his only other defog is Moltres, which obviously takes 50%, and Torn T, which it can defog, but again, it forces it out of that offensive role that it would like to have sometimes. And that's just very limiting to the potential of this team. Finally, almost finally, electric types destroy this team, because any electric type that can do some chip to Piloswine, or even just a player that's able to lure out a Piloswine and beat it, like any electric type with like Grass Knot, is going to just wreck this team. It does not answer them well at all. Like AB Tangrowth and Piloswine are the only options that it really has for that, and those just are not amazing. Piloswine is, it's not bad, but it's hard when it's your only really good stop to him, and when so much of your team is weak to electric. And finally, this team doesn't really have setup options. Moltres can with Z Sunny Day, and Mega Gallade actually is the only good setup mon on this team. It can run Sword Stance or Bulk Up. I mean, yes, it can run Calm Mind, but come on, it really gonna run Calm Mind Mega Gallade? Prove me wrong. But the setup is very mediocre for this team. It's pretty predictable who's going to set up, and again, I guess Slurpuff, but very, very niche there. And it's just, this team kind of, it trips over itself. The offense is good, and the defense is good, but they just get in each other's way, and they kind of interfere with each other, and it just feels a little bit awkward. But I think if it's played smart, it could definitely do really well, because, as I said, it has great components to this, and it is just barely out of the top half for now, but that's easy going to move up if he plays well with it and moves up. So, moving on then, we have got the Belgium Blastoise, coached by Axelraid, and his team is Kyurem Black, Infernape, Raikou, Mimikyu, Umbreon, Megastelix, Staraptor, Rabombi, Whiscash, and Bellossom. I'm gonna get a drink of water. So, his users are Kyurem Black and Bellossom, and I have no problem with Z users. They're actually, honestly, just what I would go with. Kyurem Black is fantastic with them, and Bellossom actually got Quiver Dance this gen, so it's almost bringable. So this team is finally, I think, where we get to the point where, now that we're in the top half, we have more positives than we do negatives, which is going to be much better for my mentality going forward. I've been shitting on stuff too much. So this team is powerful. Kyurem Black, Infernape, Raikou, all his breakers. Mimikyu is a good setup threat. Staraptor is just fuck every team that doesn't have a bird resist. And Rabombi is a good setup threat too. And it's just not, good powerful offense breakers. It's got the setup. Kyurem can set up with Z moves, like Z Hail. Infernape can do all kinds of shit, like Nasty Plot. Mimikyu is an extremely reliable setup sweeper. Rabombi, as I am figuring out in CPC, is a great Quiver Dancer. As I mentioned, even Blossom. But it's also got good speed. All the way from Kyurem Black all the way up to Raikou and Rabombi. So it's got really, really fast Mons, which is good. And it doesn't have ridiculous speed gaps as you go into the lower speeds. It actually does cover them well enough. And that's somewhat where the positives end there. The offense is great. There's not really many flaws with that offense. It's powerful, it has setup, it has momentum. It's everything an offense could want. It's more in some of the other elements of the team. The hazard game is really not good here because his only stealth rockers are Mega Steelix and Infernape. Infernape almost never runs stealth rocks, and Whiscash might get them. I don't think it does, but I wouldn't be blown away if it did get them. But Mega Steelix, kind of leaning on that as a stealth rocker, which is maybe not a mon you always want to bring, but I guess you're going to in this case. And I do have to give a lot of props to Mega Steelix Umbreon being generally a very good defensive core. Mega Steelix takes on the Fairy types and Psychic types that threaten Umbreon, but the one thing that core is weak to, and it's not necessarily addressed with the rest of the draft, is fighting types. Now, they're somewhat checked by Rabombi and Mimikyu, but neither of them really want to switch into that, so strong fighting types are just going to blow through this team. I can see a Mega Gallade doing really, really well just by spamming close combat, because Rabombi probably can't switch into that twice. I'd be surprised if it could. Maybe not as surprised, but either way, fighting types give this team a problem. Its hazard game is meh. Its removal is also very subpar given the mons that it has. Kyurem Black and Staraptor and Rabombi want those hazards removed, but its only removal is actually Rabombi and Staraptor, and those are just not good defoggers at all. Mostly because those are the mons that want to defog in the first place. And this offense is really good. I guess if you put up enough pressure to keep your opponent from getting hazards up on you, you can avoid that issue, but that is my main nitpick, and that is why you're just barely in the top half. But really good offense you drafted. I do like this team. Next, we are going to move on to... Where are you? I'm trying to look on the dock. Oh, there we go. The Atlanta Landorus, coached by Monster. His team is the Megazard X, Skarmory, Florges, Swampert, Virizion, Jolteon, Zoroark, Cofagrigus, Claydol, Ambipom, and Skuntank. Z users being Virizion and Zoroark. This team has a lot of good stuff going for it. The speed tiers are very good. It's got a lot of fast threats. The defensive core is also really good. Skarmory, Florges, Swampert are very good. You also have some supporting pieces such as Skuntank and I guess Claydol, although Claydol does not really play much of a role here, that anything that Florges or Swampert doesn't cover, but I suppose in a niche situation, maybe. And Cofagrigus. Cofagrigus is very good for this team, actually. I do like Cofag. It's a good mon. It's a good mon. In addition, the hazard game is very strong here, as Skarmory is extremely reliable at setting up rocks, as is Swampert, and Claydol has them, but I think between Skarmory and Swampert, rocks are going to get up no issue. And I guess my only complaint about it is that for a team with a Megazard X, having to lean on Skarmory for defog, which, again, I think Skarmory is also a good defogger, but seeing as it's his only defogger, it's going to really limit his ability to fully, spike stack, because he's going to have to be defogging his own hazards away anyway. That does limit that element, but it is definitely there, so I don't think it's a ridiculous issue. And So some of the nitpicks I have about this team. So it has good speed, good defensive core, good speed tiers, but it does lack physical offense outside of Megazard X. Like, it doesn't have any physical breakers. Zard X can set up and be a great physical breaker. Virizion can set up and be a breaker, but it doesn't have any just immediate big powerhouse, which is going to be somewhat of an issue for this team, as well as it doesn't have a lot of momentum. Jolteon can Volt Switch out, and I believe that's actually it. That's really the only momentum it has, Jolteon. It also does not have priority at all, besides Fake Out from Ambipom and Sucker Punch from Skuntank, which I think both are fairly mediocre. And it's especially because fast choice Scarfers are going to be run a lot because of Megazard, so having priority is really nice with Zard, but this team doesn't quite have that. However, just its really solid defensive core, plus how well it supports Zard X, is definitely landing it at this spot at number 6. Zoroark, I feel like, is going to be the big question mark for this team, and how well he can use it is really going to have a big part in how his season is defined, because if he is able to play it as one of his defensive mons and get a surprise KO at pretty much every game, that's going to be huge in assisting Zard X, because usually there's only 1, maybe 2 solid checks to Zard, and if you're able to surprise take one of those out, that opens up the door for Zard to win. And even other mons, like, say, a Jolteon, or, say, a Coalmine Florges, who knows. But Zoroark is going to be a big question mark for this team. I think this team is really solid, though. I guess I did forget to mention that Florges gets Defog, too, which helps support Zard, so Skarmory doesn't have to lean on it, but... and it did get Claydol for Spin, but I still think Skarmory is probably going to be the most common defogger. But I do like this team actually quite a lot. I just wish it had more of a breaking present, because it doesn't really have breakers on either side. But that Zoroark, it can somewhat make up for it by being an unexpected breaker. So that is number 6. And for number 5, we are going to move on to... Where did you go? I literally just had you. There we go. The Flint Tropius, coached by Shiny Spam. His team is Garchomp, Mew, Rotom Wash, Crobat, Decidueye, Alolan Persian, Lycanroc, Midnight, Simisear, Munchlax, and Mega Mawile, with his Z users being Garchomp and Alolan Persian. So, this team, I do like this team a lot. The top 5 teams are all, I think, really, really good, and they have a lot more positives than negatives. Top 4, really, but Shiny was very close to this category. So, what is... Oh, I was reading... Okay, there's the right notes. This team is extremely versatile. Just so many mons can do so many things. Garchomp, Mew, Crobat, Decidueye, those are mostly it, but they're extremely good at being versatile, as well as Rotom Wash fits this team so well. It fits so many defensive roles on this team. It gets momentum into Garchomp that it likes. It fits well defensively with Crobat, because Crobat resists its only weakness. And then the electric weakness they both share is covered by both Garchomp and Decidueye. And Munchlax can eat some hits, too. It's a good value pick for 1 point. I do like that. As well as Mega Mawile is going to just... And okay, I'm back. Sorry for the cut. I got interrupted, so I have to... just continue on, and not gonna lie, that pisses me off, because I'm literally gonna have to learn to edit this on the fucking spot. Obviously, by the time you see the video, it's going to have obviously been learned, because I edited it and uploaded it, but that's where we're at now. So, we are at Shoen, in the Heracross Almello. I hope I didn't butcher that. So, he has got a team consisting of Clefable, Latios, Mega Gyarados, Roserade, Swellow, Steelix, Electabuzz, Darmanitan, Trevenant, Hitmonchan, and Minior. So, Shoen has got a lot of good things going for him on this team. This is a pretty fast team. It's got a lot of good fast threats like Latios and Swellow, and to an extent Electabuzz. Well, not quality, but it fills the speed tiers very well, as well as being able to have a lot of mons do a lot of things. Clefable is super versatile. Latios is super versatile. Mega Gyarados is versatile in, like, you play around the different Dragon Dance sets very differently, as bulky as opposed to offensive. Roserade super versatile. Swellow offensively versatile, and that's mostly it. But those mons do a really good job at what they do. Or what am I saying? At being versatile. So that is that's just really beneficial and hard to prep for on this team, as well as having pretty solid setup threats: Clefable, Latios, Mega Gyarados, and actually that's it, because I'm not going to acknowledge Minior as a Mon. Those are all really good setup threats, and just it gives his team a lot of pressure that these Mons normally wouldn't exert as much. And I don't know why I paused there. I was reading something wrong. Again, I don't know what's up with me doing that this video. But he also has somewhat of a rocks issue. Clefable and Steelix are both really good rockers, but it does feel somewhat limiting that Clefable is going to have to run rocks as much as it will, because it wants to do a lot of other things. But like I said, that's somewhat of a smaller point, not a giant gaping issue, because Rock's Clefable is extremely good. In fact, it is broken and will always get them up. But still, it wants to do other things. It limits its Calm Mind potential, and so it's not that big a deal. As well as there's a lot of, I already mentioned the setup threats, and the momentum on this team is somewhat lacking. Only having Electabuzz and Swellow gain momentum, and even then Swellow isn't always clicking U-turn, it wants to click Boom Burst whenever it's in, so that's somewhat of an issue. But he's got the bulk to be able to switch into things if he makes predictions, and not get totally punished for it. And so some of the other issues, bulky waters could give this team a problem if he doesn't bring Roserade, so it kind of does make that mon mandatory. And I don't understand a couple picks of his. I don't understand Trevenant, like what that necessarily brings besides Roserade. I don't see a week where he would rather have a Trevenant than a Roserade. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but I think those are more smaller points. I think the strong parts of his team far outweigh the negatives, just in how freaking good a lot of his mons are, especially together. The strengths of this team really, really carry it, and it doesn't have any glaring weaknesses, more smaller issues that I guess are adding up a little bit, but this is overall a very good team. I am excited to see how this team goes. Next, we are moving on to, I really don't know how to pronounce this coach's name, the Houndoom Hercules, coached by Vical Chaos, like Vical Chaos. I'm assuming it's like Michael, like Vical. I don't fucking know. We're going with that until I hear otherwise. I'm calling him Vic. Let's go with that, Vic. So his team is Mega Lopunny, Hoopa Unbound, Zeraora, Scizor, Druddigon, Granbull, Sandslash, Celebi, and Volcanion. Now, this is how to draft around Hoopa Unbound 101. I actually don't think I have seen anyone draft around Hoopa Unbound as well as this team has, because he has just checked off every box that you need to support Hoopa. You need fast offense to help threaten the faster mons. He has got that in Mega Lopunny and Zeraora, as well as with priority from Scizor, adding just, icing on the cake. He has got momentum to get Hoopa in with Zeraora, Scizor, and Celebi. He has got ways to punish U-turn in Druddigon and Rocky Helmet Granbull, and even Scizor just taking kind of nothing from it. And just Hoopa is not the only Mon putting on offensive pressure on this team that is not totally leaned on. He has still got special attack with Celebi and Zeraora, so it is not super leaned on. I think he drafted around Hoopa extremely well, and he gave it Z moves to give it that setup potential that this team would otherwise kind of be lacking, other than PsychedelicScizor, and Nasty Watt Celebi, speed boosting, I should say. Yeah, this team has got a lot of good things going for it. Vic, just, he's done a really good job with this team. I'm stalling as I try to find where I lost him in my notes. There he is. So his speed is just fantastic. Megalop and Zeraora being very, very fast Mons, as well as the priority with Scizor. Celebi is fairly fast. He's got a good hazard game and okay removal, because Celebi and Druddigon are very good rockers. Sandslash is a decent rocker too, and his removal with Rapid Spin, Sandslash, and Defog Scizor is alright. They're not bad. Scizor may be forced to be a little bulkier, but I don't think that's really an issue with this team. It's not needing Scizor to be offensive. And the only real nitpick that this team kind of struggles with is fire types. But even then, Druddigon can switch into them, and Volcanion can switch into them, and even Hoopa Unbound can take some fire hits. Although, well, no, I said that Darmanitan would shred this team, then I realized Rocky Helmet Roughtskin Druddigon is just going to make it kill itself. So, yeah, it's not a huge issue, and I just think the offensive, just enormous pressure this team is going to exert with its speed and power with Megalop, Hoopa U is just incredible, and I did have to put them top 3 because of this. Celebi is a great defensive Mon. Sure, he has 2 Mons quad weak to U-turn, but as I said, he's definitely got ways to handle that, so I'm not really as worried about this. I want to see a Hoopa U finally put in work. I've never actually been in a season where I've seen Hoopa U get just a ton of kills and be a good Mon on a team. I've always seen it just be a total waste and usually get dropped or just generally just not used well. So that is number 3. This team is going to be pretty good, I think. Please don't prove me wrong here. I want to be right about how well you drafted around Hoopa. Just don't prove me wrong, please. And we're moving on to number 2, who is the New Jersey Houndooms, coached by Loco Ghoul. His team is Lando T, Tapu Fini, Ferrothorn, Latias, Venusaur, Mega Houndoom, Sawk, Torkoal, Manectric, Sawsbuck, and Aerodactyl. This team is awesome. It is a really nice Sun team with the Torkoal, Mega Houndoom, and Venusaur, and then a Sawsbuck just thrown in there too. It's also totally not dependent on Sun either. It can function without its Sun core completely, as Lando T, Tapu Fini, Ferrothorn, Latias are all good. And Mega Houndoom doesn't need Sun either. It is benefited by Sun. It certainly doesn't need it though. And Tapu Fini, Ferrothorn, Latias is going to be a disgusting defensive core to break. It's just ridiculous. Tapu Fini is able to take, and Latias both take those fire hits. If the opponent tries to abuse the Sun, they just slurp it all up. And Torkoal takes fire hits too. But yeah, this team is kind of great. Its defense is great. The Sun offense is great. It's not totally dependent on Sun for its offense though, because Lando T is there. It is great. Latias is a good offensive Mon. Houndoom doesn't need it. And Arrow is there. Arrow is actually a really good Mon for this team because I'd say without Arrow, this team would really lean on Landorus to be a defensive Mon as well, at least as far as Stealth Rocks go. I still think Stealth Rock Lando T could come a decent amount, but between Ferrothorn and Aerodactyl, between the two of those, you're usually able to find a good Stealth Rocker, and I may be wrong, but I believe Torkoal gets Stealth Rocks as well. I know it at least gets Rapid Spin, although it's definitely not a great spinner. Latias and Tapu Fini are able to take care of hazard removal very easily with their defog. So I think his hazard game is also extremely strong around his Sun team. And Aerodactyl gets defog. I forgot about that too. Just very, very few weaknesses to this team at all. But yeah, just there's a couple small nitpicks, but it's very small, and that's just Manectric is meh, and Sawsbuck is not really necessary. You've already got the Grass type Sun Abuser and Venusaur. Really, you've already got 2 Sun Abusers. You don't need another one. I guess I understand it's an actual physical Sun Abuser, which he didn't have, so I guess that's fair, and it gives him a Ghost immunity, I guess. Not that he really struggled with Ghost, because Mega Houndoom is there. But still, Sawsbuck and Manectric are not even bad for the team. They're just meh, you know. And I don't complain about this team too much. I think Arrow fits this team really well. The Sun, this is the first really good Sun team I've seen too. This is back-to-back teams. It's the first time I've seen something done well. Lando T is, I haven't even addressed Lando T either. Lando T is amazing. Top 3 mon in the format at least. Just Z moves obviously are just necessary on it, and God, this is just going to be a problem for opposing teams to face, because the speed is there, the defense is there. It's not just a brainless offense team. It's got that good defensive core, and you may say Ferrothorn doesn't like the Sun because fire hits are going to destroy it. They kind of destroy it anyway. It's not going to be able to take them anymore, but like I said, the fire answers in this team are really, really good. So I really, really like this team, and those are really my only nitpicks. I just don't think Manectric or Sawsbuck are amazing, but you know, even Manectric fills that role. It gives this team some momentum that it was kind of lacking. And yeah, so as you can see, and the only team left, the #1 team, the post-draft #1 ranked team in Blue Division Power Rankings, is the Brighton Bewares, coached by Evan. His team is Tapu Lele, Komao, Nihilego, Kartana, Mandibuzz, Azelf, Seismitoad, Mega Camerupt, Golisopod, Emolga, and Clefairy. Now, this team, I almost knew right away from looking at it first, this was going to be the #1 team. Its weaknesses are almost non-existent. I found 1 or 2, but they're almost non-existent as far as glaring weaknesses. So his Z users are the Kartana, the Golisopod, and the Clefairy. Kartana didn't have to be the Z move user. I maybe would have gone with Komao, but again, that's not like a bad choice thing, more so than it's just a personal preference type thing. But just let's go over how balanced this offense is. So many setup threats. Calm Mind Lele, the million different variants of setup that Komao gets. Nihilego with special attack boosting or speed boosting Beast Boost. Kartana also has Beast Boost and can Swords Dance. Azelf can Nasty Plot. Golisopod, I believe, from Swords Dance, but that kind of, I was supposed to end my point at Azelf, but I didn't put the and, so I had to try to keep going. Tapu Lele is amazing. Obviously, it could not be a Z user because it was only allowed under the stipend that it was not allowed to be a Z user, but that is totally fair. This offense just blends so well together. Mons like Tapu Lele and Nihilego struggle with Steel types, but then you have Steel-type abusers, like Komao, like Kartana, like Mega Camerupt, that just love Steel-types to come in. And likewise, what was I getting at? Fairy-types that Komao is going to struggle with, Kartana and Nihilego beat, as well as Mega Camerupt. Just the offense is so... It's all bulky, too. Nothing on this team is straight-up frail, except for Azelf, which is just so offensively versatile and fast, it's fine, and Emolga, which admittedly is the only real unmon on this team. The hazard game is really good here, too, with rockers being Komao, Nihilego, Azelf, Seismitoad, Mega Camerupt, and Clefairy. He has got 6 stealth rockers, and a lot of them are actually good stealth rockers. And he's got good hazard removal, because Kartana can defog and Mandibuzz can defog. I believe that's it. Emolga may, but again, I'm not really going to acknowledge that too much. But those are really reliable defoggers that he does have. he's always going to be able to get rocks up. He's always going to be able to put on pressure with this combination of mons. A lot of mons can go choiced, can go setup. They blend so well together. Mandibuzz is a beautiful blanket check defensive mon, as well as Seismitoad. Mandibuzz able to get slow U-turns into mons. Azelf with a fast U-turn. Azelf being able to abuse that psychic... Azelf levitates. Never mind, it can't abuse the psychic terrain from Tapu Lele, but that's not... It doesn't even really need it. It's strong enough as is, gets momentum, can be utility. Azelf is a great mon as long as it's not leaned on too hard, which in this case it is absolutely not. Let's see what else I have here. His terrain is not even really abusable against him. Psychic types can't even really abuse the other psychic terrain because Mandibuzz is just such a hard shutdown to so many psychic types, as well as Golisopod having that first impression to absolutely destroy any psychic types. And this team is not reliant on priority at all, so the psychic terrain does not interfere with it. And with how fast of a team this generally is, Trick Room looks like an appealing option until you run into Mega Camerupt and realize that you're gonna just end up losing if you set up Trick Room against it, as well as the priority from Golisopod, which that's what I think Golisopod should be used for, if anything. But still, this is just a fantastic team, and just as icing on the cake, it's got a great